Okay, let's continue. The outcomes of education. So outcomes-based education focuses on classroom instruction, on the skills and competencies of that students must demonstrate when they exit the class, and they exit the course, or they exit the university. So there are two types of outcomes. It's called immediate and deferred outcomes. When you say immediate outcomes, these are skills acquired upon completion of an instruction. So let's say, for example, after a certain class, after um, after the semester, or after finishing the semester, or after finishing the grade level or the year level, or a segment of a certain program, or a webinar, or a seminar, or a program itself. So these are referred to as instructional outcomes. So when you say from the word immediate, these are the immediate outcomes, or the things that you can do right after a period of instructional education. So, example, ability to communicate by writing and speaking. So, after, let's say, after taking the subject communication, then that's what you can do. Communicate by, you will be able to write, to communicate through writing or speaking. Let's say, speaking in a telephone, speaking in front of the crowd. So those are examples of that. I mean, that is an example of immediate outcome. Another is mathematical problem skills. So let's say after a certain period, or let's say 2 or 3 sessions in mathematics with the topic word problems, that could be your immediate outcomes. Another, skill in identifying objects by using the different senses. Okay, that's also an immediate outcome. Another, ability to produce artistic or literary works. So after a painting lesson, you will be able to paint by yourself or on your own. Or let's say after taking a lesson in um, writing, let's say literary works in writing, or after a training in storytelling. So you'll be able to do it by yourself right after. So that's an immediate outcome. Also, the ability to do research and write the results. So those are examples of immediate outcomes. The next one here is the deferred outcomes. When you say deferred, so it's somehow later, it can also be said as, let's say, later on. So example, it refers to the ability to apply cognitive, psychomotor, and affective skills or competencies in various situations many years after completion of a degree program, or it's somehow a lifelong learning. After graduating in college, still you will be able to know how to teach, how to speak in front of people, how to make a discussion. So that is called a deferred outcomes. Example, success in professional practice or occupation. Another, promotion in a job. So that's an indication of an a deferred, I mean, the learning outcome is still there because you have promoted. So that's an indicator. Another, success in career planning, health and wellness, and also awards and recognitions. So these are referred to institutional outcomes. So every institutional outcomes is also a deferred outcomes. It's a lifelong learning. Okay? So we have institutional, program, course, and learning outcomes. So these are different levels of outcomes. So there are attributes. There are the attributes that a graduate of an institution is expected to demonstrate 3 years after the graduation. So institutional outcomes. Okay, so we have here first institutional outcomes. These are set by the universities or the institution. So these are statements of what the graduates of an educational institution are supposed to be able to do beyond graduation. So the previous examples that I have said, those are examples of institutional outcomes. So most deferred outcomes are institutional outcomes. But there are a lot of outcomes that are not institutional, but these are cool deferred because it's a lifelong learning or it's a lifelong skills that um, you were able to do even after a long time of learning such skills. So, but going back, institutional outcomes, these are the outcomes being set by the institution, or these are the goals of the institution that every graduates that they are producing is that they will be able to do such skills. So for the program outcomes, these are what the graduates of a particular educational program or degrees are able to do at the completion of the degree or program. Let's say, for example, for BE Ed students after they graduate. So, example of a program is, let's say, BE Ed. So it's a different program from BS Ed. So in the BS Ed program, there is the program of Bachelor of Secondary Education major in math. It's a different program from English, from Filipino. Also, the BETLED, these are different programs. So in every program, we have set certain outcomes. So that is it. But we make sure that these program outcomes corresponds or supports to the attainment of the institutional outcomes. So these are what the graduates of particular educational program to be able to do at the completion of the degree or program. Okay? So mostly the program outcomes is helping in or is aligned so that the institutional outcomes will be attained. That means the attainment of the program outcomes is also the attainment of the institutional outcomes. The next one is the course. Don't be confused when we say course, it's not your course nga kung asa mo nga program na belong. So course here meant the subject. Course or subject is just the same. So course or subject outcomes are what students should be able to demonstrate after the end of the course or a program. Let's say you were taking a math class or a math subject. So the outcomes, let's say for example, is that you'll be able to solve clock problems. You will be able to solve um, mathematical problems in, let's say, using um, polynomials. So those are, so that is subject outcomes or course outcomes. The next one is the learning outcomes or instructional outcomes. So in a certain lesson, so this is what we are going to set. It's the learning outcomes. are what students, okay, these are what students should be able to do after a lesson or instruction. So after this lesson, you will be able to identify instructional outcomes, program outcomes, course outcomes, and learning outcomes. So that's an example of a learning outcome. If you have observed the notes or the instructional materials that I've given you, it always starts with learning outcomes so that, okay, every teacher is encouraged, or it's very ethical to start with a learning outcome in every lesson. So that's a way of guiding or letting our students be guided, and letting our students know what to expect in that certain lesson. So they will know how to respond. Okay, so that is learning outcomes. So it's a somehow a hierarchical um order, in a hierarchical order. So the attainment of the learning outcomes, every learning outcomes is also the attainment of the course outcomes. So the attainment of the course outcomes will lead to the attainment of the program outcomes. And as what I've said, program outcomes, I mean, the attainment of the program outcomes will lead to the institutional outcomes. Okay. We have here samples of educational objectives and learning outcomes in Araling Panlipunan. So again, learning objectives, I mean educational objectives and learning outcomes is different. So objectives is the view of the teacher, but outcomes are what we set in our class nga ma-attain na to after the lesson. Okay? Example here, pagbibigay sa mga mag-aaral ng kaalaman at pag-unawa tungkol sa tao, kapaligiran at lipunan. So this is cognitive objective because it talks about kaalaman, meaning their learning, their knowledge, and pag-unawa. So, if you try to compare, okay, let's have one learning outcome, na ilalarawan ang sariling buhay simula sa pagsilang hanggang sa kasalukuyang edad. So, we have here in educational objectives, this is our goal as teachers of what we are going to do. But learning outcome focuses on what the students can do. Okay? Okay, another. Paglinang ng kakayahan. So this is our role as teachers na magsagawa ng proyektong pangtahanan at pampamayanan. Okay? So, para ma-achieve ni nga objective, this is the result. This should be the result. So, para pag nakakasulat ng sanaysay na naglalarawan ng mga taong bumubuo ng sariling pamilya. So, since if this will be successfully, if your educational objective will be successfully delivered in your class, there's a big possibility that these learning outcomes will be observed. Okay? Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.